So let's get started tonight with any questions that you have, or do you want me to maybe talk about some of frequently asked questions that I get, and then we'll go from there? Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to go through some basic questions that I get. I'll go through my top 10 questions that I wrote down here that I get every single year, and we'll start from that. The first question I always get is,
Uh-huh.
how do we kosher our kitchen for Pesach? Now, I'm going to start from the onset. Koshering your kitchen for Pesach is not the same as koshering your kitchen when it's not kosher.
Wait.
Now, I'm going to also give you a little caveat. I do not believe that we should all be the Paschal sacrifice when it comes to Passover. We should not be the Korban Pesach when it comes to Passover, which means my job as a rabbi is to help make it easier and practical. I don't think we need to start going overboard, which means dust is not chametz, and you don't have to paint the living room. If you want to spring clean, bechavod, spring clean with pleasure. But I don't think it should be the week before Pesach, in my humble opinion. So when I talk about Pesach, I want to talk about it in a way that's practical. What are the minimal? Now, if you have a specific question about a particular tradition, a chumrah, something that you want to talk about, ask me, and I'm happy to tell you. But I'm giving you the basic Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, on how to observe Pesach the best way that we can, but the most practical and simple way. So let's start practically. The oven. The oven, I'm going to say, is going to be the most complicated item to kosher for Pesach. If the oven is a self-cleaning one, you can kosher it by setting it on a full cleaning cycle. The rack should also be inside, and they should be self-cleaned. The only thing is that before you use it, there is a tradition for many people to put aluminum foil at the door. The reason why is because the inside of the door does not become hot enough. So because of that, the inside of a door should be covered with aluminum foil. If the oven is not self-cleaning, you should thoroughly clean the oven and put it on the highest temperature for 1 hour with the racks inside. And in that case, as an extra precaution, I would also line the door and I would line the racks with silver foil. Okay, so for a self-cleaning oven, you can just put it on a cycle. For a non-self-cleaning oven, just as the highest temperature for 1 hour, and then line the door and the racks. How do you safely adhere to the aluminum to the inside of the door is the question that someone just sent me. By the way, you can send me a public or private question with pleasure. There shouldn't be an issue. Aluminum foil itself is not hot. That's why we like aluminum foil. It doesn't get hot. So it's an item that you can line with, and you can also not have to worry about the heat affecting it. So I don't think you have to overdo it. I just say that think of the place where perhaps the food may touch or the tray may touch. I think that's important. So someone just asked me about almond flour. I'll get to other foods as well, but I'm just going to answer questions as they come in. The Costco almond flour is fine. It's 100% almond flour. We know this for a fact, and it doesn't have to say kosher for Passover. There are many items that are in bags that do not have to say kosher for Passover, and that is one of them. So let's go to the stove now. The stoves come in 5 types: ceramic, induction, solid plate electric, gas, and gas on glass burners. So all of these things, whether it is ceramic induction, solid plate electric, gas or gas on glass burners. You can just clean the surface, put the fire on to the highest for 10 minutes. And if you can, you should cover the areas around the burners. If you can't, it's fine. Again, this is not koshering from non-kosher to kosher. This is just koshering for Pesach. Obviously, make sure it's really, really clean, and then you put them on for 10 minutes and you're fine. The surfaces and sinks in the kitchen should be thoroughly cleaned with a detergent or any other liquid that, according to Jewish law, this is an interesting classification in koshering in Jewish law. It's called pasul le'achilat kelev, which means it's something that a dog would not eat. So it just means a good detergent that a dog would look, sniff it, and move on. That's it. It's in it. We have these various classifications in halacha, and this is one of the interesting ones. And then afterwards, they should be covered with rubber mats or foil or something that you can cover it, because even though with surfaces and sinks, we have a tradition of covering it. Fridges should be thoroughly cleaned, and you can just put some kind of lining or something on the shelves. But there is a tradition that the shelves themselves, whatever food we're going to put on our table on Pesach, should not touch the actual shelves of the refrigerator, and that you should be able to have the shelves lined. Microwaves and dishwashers should not be used during Pesach if you use them during the year. It's too complicated to kosher. Just so you know, in general, those are items that, if you have to kosher them from non-kosher to kosher, are super complicated. So I would recommend just don't use them. Pots and cutlery. Now, my caveat is, with pots and cutlery, we live in a time of abundance. And so therefore, easiest is have your set of Pesach dishes. If you can't do that, then you would have to do hagalah. You would dip them into boiling water. And obviously, plastic bowls and utensils may not be kosher for Pesach. So here's a question that just came in. I have eggs that I got now, and they have been put on the fridge shelves without liners. Can I cook with them on Pesach? The answer is absolutely yes. If you want to be extremely careful, then what I would do is, if you have one of those things in your fridge that holds eggs, I would clean that thing, and then I would line it, and then I would take them out of their container and put them on. You don't even have to do that. You can take the outside. It's very clear, the outside of the egg carton. You can take a look at that egg carton. You can clean that egg carton if you want. If you want to go even so far as to take the eggs out of the carton, clean the carton thoroughly, put the eggs back in, and you can put them on your Pesach liner. You don't have to get new eggs because they touched the chametz shelf. Frying pans and oven dishes need to be koshered with a blowtorch, what's called libun gamor. If it's not possible, what you can do is you can place them upside down over an open flame. And what you do is you put a soft piece of paper on top of the pot, and when it's singed, you know that it's fine. And that's okay for libun gamor. And pans and dishes that are coated in Teflon, like most of our pans today, cannot be koshered. Any tableware that's made of earthenware, porcelain, or ceramic items, we cannot use them for Pesach. They can't be koshered. Any glassware that was used with cold food, you can just wash them, and you could use your glassware for Pesach. But what I would recommend is that glassware that you did use for hot food, like Pyrex and things like that, I would not use them for Pesach as well. Somebody asked about a glass top electric stove. All you have to do is clean it very well and put the burners on as high as you can for 10 minutes, and it's fine for Pesach. Not fine from kosher to non-kosher, but it's fine for Pesach. Another question that came in: what do I do when I'm sharing a living accommodation with a non-Jew? So there's many people that have this issue. And if you share a living accommodation with a non-Jew, and where the kitchen will continue to be used for chametz on Pesach, the basic premise is like this. As long as a person gets rid of their chametz, which means you get rid of your chametz, or you put it away, or you sell it to a non-Jew, you're not responsible for someone else, some other non-Jewish person that lives in your same place. You're not responsible for their chametz, which means even if it's in the kitchen, and even if it's a shared accommodation, and even if you're going to see it, it's okay. What I would recommend is if you're sharing this, is you can please ask that one of the burners, let's say, be covered with silver foil, so it's clear that you cleaned it and you koshered it, and say, can we just use this burner in the apartment or in the house? Can we use that for Passover, and can nobody else use that besides for me for the duration of the week? That's what I would do. And I would also cover like the immediate surrounding around that burner. And if it's not possible, then what you'll have to do is just kosher it before you just clean it around and then put it on for 10 minutes before each time you use it. And obviously you won't be able to cook on Yom Tif, which is a different conversation, but you can definitely still get away with it. I would say also, obviously, once again, since we live in a time of abundance and there's lots of dishes and things that are available, you should just have your own set of Passover dishes that you are very careful not to put in the sink, but to, if it's your one plate or fork or spoon, you can just kind of, use that and not let it touch the other things in the kitchen. Okay, next question. If you cannot light a fire, that's an interesting question. If you're not able to light a fire, if you're in a place where you can't light a fire, for example, you're in a hospital or an elder care center, what do you do for batichas with chametz and for bir chametz, for searching and for burning the chametz? So this is a very common issue that happens. What you can perform the search for chametz with a flashlight. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of opinions that hold that today it's fine. Also, if it's not possible to perform the burning of the chametz with fire, you can flush it down the toilet, and that is considered like you burned it. It's basically it's proper disposal of it, which is really what we're getting at. So flushing it down the toilet, putting it in the garbage can is not good enough because you don't have direct contact to it being out of your hands. It could still be on your property, it could still be in your care, and so therefore I would recommend flushing it down the toilet. What if there's no way, and this is a very common thing that I find today, what if there's no way to thoroughly clean for Pesach? I'll say this again, dust is not chametz. You don't have to make yourself absolutely insane. Toothbrushes are not necessary. And in the event that let's say, example, someone just asked me, they're going to be going away for Pesach, and they're coming to the place where they're staying right before the holiday. What do? So what you do is doing a basic vacuuming of the floors is sufficient. You just have to make sure you look around and make sure there's no visible chametz. Because when you say the kol chamira, when you say that anything that is chametz should be like the dust of the earth, you're getting rid of that chametz. You're not responsible for every single little teeny bit of crumb. It's okay. You already said it. You said kol chamira, anything that's crumbs, anything that I can't notice is not my chametz, and the mitzvah is okay, and you're not going to have any chametz in your possession, even if there's little crumbs. So, what I would recommend is if you go before Pesach, even if it's going to be in the afternoon before Pesach, which I told this other person, is you should do b'tikat chametz. You should actually do a proper searching of chametz in the place to make sure that there's nothing that's visible. Okay. You're welcome to unmute yourself at any point, or you can just write in the messages as you have. I'm happy to take more questions as we go along. What happens, and this is a very common question, and this is one of the main questions that I want to cover in tonight's class. I would say if there's one question that I'm going to cover and that you listen to, this is the one, because it's happening this year. When you have young kids or you have big kids who can't stay up late, and the Passover comes in late. Pesach is coming in here. It's in Montreal. It's 7:30, which means Shkia. Officially, you would not be able to start the Seder till 8:23, according to Halachot. It's too late. It's too late. The kids they're not gonna enjoy it. The whole point of the Seder is so the kids ask questions. If you don't have the kids at the Seder, doesn't make any sense. You want them there. You want them to be in full form, especially a lot of the kids, if they're in a Jewish school, they've spent time preparing for it. They're very excited about it, and you want to honor that time. And this is very important. That's the job. That's our job. On Pesach night, we have two biblical obligations: to eat matzah, and we eat matzah after Shkia, which is 8:23 here in Montreal. And if you're in other cities, just find out when your Shkia is. And number two is to tell your children the story that happened to you when you left Egypt, which means if the kids are sleeping, you do not fulfill one of the biblical obligations. There's so many other things. The whole Seder, all those things we do, they're all rabbinic. There's only two biblical obligations in the first night of Pesach: to eat matzah at the proper time and to tell the children the story. Which means if you're going to start it too late, that you can't tell the children the story, then you miss the point. So here, I'm going to go through a couple of options. What I did was I went through the Code of Jewish Law and I put together a couple structural options for doing this properly. So the basic structure of the Haggadah is Haggadah, Matzah, Maror, and obviously the four cups. That's the basic. The Haggadah, remember, the Haggadah was just created as a way to have order in what we're supposed to do for Pesach. Now, all of the tradition is that the four cups be had after nightfall, as well as the matzah, and I think that's it. So the first and second cup should be interrupted by the reading of the Haggadah, because if you're going to drink all four cups in one order, then you can't say that they're individual cups. They're all part of the same, right? If you're eating the dinner and you're having many glasses of wine during your dinner, they're all the same glass as far as the Haggadahs and the Seder is concerned. So we have to figure out a way to interrupt and to have four separate cups. You hear our problem? I'm going to explain to you how it's going to be done, but I'm giving you a little bit of the background of the issue. So if you change the order and you drink the four glasses without interruptions, then you just are cumulative as one single glass. So if you want to start the Seder and you haven't had, you want to make sure there's enough time for the kids. So what you would do is the following. And this is what we're going to do for the community Seder at the shul. We're going to light candles at 7:30. And then we're going to start the Haggadah part. So we'll wash our hands, orchatz, we'll wash our hands, we'll eat karpas, and then we're going to start reading the Haggadah. We're going to, generally, the Haggadah takes us around an hour with everybody, with the four questions and all the different things. And so when 8:23 arrives, which is going to be the correct time, we're going to make Kiddush, then we're going to wash our hands, eat the matzah, and continue the Seder. Another way of doing it is you do a light meal. It's very complicated with the meal because according to Jewish law, you're supposed to have a good appetite for the matzah. It's supposed to be exciting to you. So you're supposed to have a good appetite for the matzah. So having the full meal before you start the Seder, I wouldn't recommend that, but you could have a light meal, especially if you have kids. You want to make sure that they're not ravishing for that. So that's another option, is doing the light meal first and then doing this order, and then I think you can move on. So option one is the following: you do orchatz, the washing of the hands without the blessing. You eat the wet vegetable, and then you do the Haggadah. At 8:23, which is the correct time, then actually, just for the record, it's going to be in exactly 1 week from now, from this moment we're talking about, exactly 1 week to this moment. It's 8:23 right now. So at 8:23, which is the correct time, you're going to say Kiddush. Then you're going to do wash your hands, eat matzah, maror, korech, and then have your meal. So you just continue, but you're giving yourself a little bit of an extra time. Now, if you want to start even earlier than that, it's going to, again, you can do that as long as you could hypothetically, I'm just saying, do the orchats, wash your hands, eat the wet vegetable, then do the Seder, then eat a light dinner, and then do Kiddush, and then do Motzi Matzah and have the main course as Shulchan Aruch. You could probably do that if you wanted to. So there's a couple of other options that I came up with that could work. I don't know if that's important to you, if you want to know any of the other options. The point is also that as you go along, you want to separate your 4 cups so that they're separated. That's really the main issue I think that's going to come up. This is valid according to all opinions. Yes. Someone asked me if it's valid. Well, yes, it is valid. There's no problem with it. If you want, I can even give you all the sources that I found for this, and the sources are as follow. You can look at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch 472:16. You can also look at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch 471:1 and 2. And what's beautiful also is I found this also in the Haggadah of Rav Shrira Goen, and a book called Dagul Mirvava Sharei Tshuva 476:1. So I didn't make my sources because I knew that people were going to ask me, how are you able to do this if you don't have any sources? So there are my sources. Okay, any other threats? No, I'm joking. What is the minimum volume of wine for the 4 cups? The minimum volume is 86 cc, which is around 3.2 ounces. I recommend, and Shifra actually was the one who put me on to these Duralux. They're 4-ounce glasses that are made for kids. They're glasses from France that are made for kids to start drinking. They're beautiful, thick glass, and they are 4 ounces. And I recommend having a glass like that because you want to have most or all of your glass when you're drinking each of the 4 cups. So I would not recommend getting a glass that's 7 or 8 ounces. It's not necessary when the minimum is 3.2 ounces, and you can have a nice 3.5 or 4-ounce glass, and that could be good enough. So 4 ounce, you drink majority of the cup, you know that you had your 3.2 ounces. That would be my recommendation. Can you use grape juice for the 4 cups? So the answer is yes. If you are underage, if you are not allowed to have wine for health reasons, you're allergic to sulfites, there is no problem eating. Thank you. Someone just, Shifra, thank you, posted at the Zone those glasses. And those are the ones we bought them last year or 2 years ago, and they're fantastic. Highly recommend. If you don't like wine, you're allowed to use grape juice for the 4 cups. If you dilute the wine with water, you're allowed to do that as well, as long as the volume of water that's being added is no more than the amount of wine that's in the cup, which means you could have mostly water, but you have to start off with a little drip. Then when you have that, drip again, drip again, drip again, drip again. Just make sure when the amount that you're adding to the cup is no more than what's in the cup. Okay, and so then you can dilute your wine. You should also just take into consideration that most wine today is diluted with water. And though it's possible that there are wines that have no water diluted, so you can always dilute that. And it just makes it easier. Again, no one had, I mean, yes, as somebody who appreciates wine, I would say that, of course, I had a big debate about this last night on my wine podcast about, that yes, you should have a nice wine, enjoy wine, but there are people, this is a different conversation, people who have a difficulty with it, who it's hard for them. and we're talking about those people. If you are somebody who appreciates wine and you love wine, Pesach is about Cherut, it's about freedom and be free and enjoy as much wine. And the nicest, of course, you want to honor Hashem with the nicest and the best. So get the nicest and the best that you can possibly get. And there's an opportunity to get something nice and the best. I think Pesach and the Chag is a great way. It's a wonderful way to honor Hashem. So basically, if you're diluting the wine, if you have an ounce of wine in there, you can't put 2 ounces of water. You have to put less than an ounce of water. Now you're going to have 2 ounces of wine in the glass with the wine and water together. So now you can add another 2 ounces. But you have to just make sure that when you're pouring into the cup, that it's less that you're pouring into than what is already there. I hope that was clear. If you did not recline, this is a good question. If you did not recline, do you have to repeat it? Oi, I had the glass of wine and I didn't recline. That's an alliteration right there. No, you don't have to. You should recline, but you still fulfilled the mitzvah if you didn't recline. Actually, there's an opinion. If you look at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch 472:15, you'll see that the Alter Rebbe says you don't have to recline at all nowadays. It's just still a tradition, so we still do it, but you don't have to do it. And you don't have to make a big deal about it if someone doesn't. And so that is the answer to that. What happens if, and this is a reality for a lot of people, we can't go through the entire Haggadah. It's too much. And I think it's important to differentiate, because sometimes it is just too much to go through the entire Haggadah. Most of the Haggadah is tradition, not halacha, not biblical. So therefore, remember, the mitzvah according to the Torah is the Igadata Levincha. It's in Shemot chapter 13, verse 8. That you should tell the story that happened to you when you left Egypt. Tell your children the story. The reading of the Haggadah just made it easier to tell the story, but it doesn't absolve us, which means if your child is 3 years old and does not get the story from the Haggadah, you still have an obligation to tell them the story. Hopefully, if you send them to a Jewish school, they're doing whatever, plagues and things, and they're having a lot of fun there, and they are learning the story, but it's still your obligation as a parent or a grandparent to make sure that your child knows. So what are the absolute must do of the Haggadah? So Avadim Hayinu, the paragraph, we were slaves in Egypt and God took us out. That is the essence of the story. That would be a must. The Metichla of Ovdei Avodah Zarah, the paragraph about that we were idolaters. That paragraph, until the end of Lavan the Aramean. And I would say B'chol Dor Vador, in every generation we're obligated, the answering of the 4 questions, that paragraph after the 4 questions, and then the blessing, the Lefichach, which is the blessing on the Haggadah. That's it. That's it. If you can't do the entire Haggadah, just do that part. And of course, to spend some time, and if you want, I put together a beautiful Haggadah that has the story in plain English, that has a lot of little fun things that you can do. And I did add these mandatory parts to it, but you could just use my simple Haggadah and make sure that you read it beforehand so you can tell the story to the kids, and you have fulfilled the obligation of Pesach. According to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch 473:53, if you don't even have a Haggadah, you can just read the part in Shemot, which is chapter 12 of the book of Shemot, which tells the story of Egypt and leaving Egypt, and that would satisfy the obligation of Pesach night. Just by the way, in case for some reason, I know we all have, I don't know how many Haggadahs, but if you don't have a Haggadah, you can even do that, and you fulfill the obligation. Here's another question. Must the Haggadah be read in Hebrew? the Haggadah may be read in English or any other language, and you still fulfill the Haggadah. You can look, Dr. Rebbe says it very clearly in the Shulchan Aruch of 473-42. You can see very clearly there, he says it can be read in any language. You do not have to read it in Hebrew. You still fulfill the mitzvah if you read it in Chinese, if you know Chinese. Must each person at the Seder recite the words of the Haggadah? No. You do not have to have every person recite it. It's okay to take turns and to go around and for it to be recited by a leader, and everyone else will fulfill the mitzvah by listening to somebody say it. And that is a very beautiful book. I found that in, which is Pirush L'Seder Leil Pesach by Rabbeinu Eliyahu. And it's a beautiful explanation, and it's something that is done by most Seders. I think that it's supposed to be interactive. That's the point of the Seder. And so I found that, and it very much backs that idea of doing it together. You don't have to worry about, you didn't say a word. You don't have to worry about saying it yourself. You can just say that, you can just say have somebody say the Haggadah, and that is good enough. Okay. Any other questions? You can unmute yourself also. Yeah, okay. How many matzahs should be on the kaira? So on the Seder plate, this is a very good question. There's actually a dispute about how many matzahs should be on the Seder plate. Some opinions say 2 matzahs, 1 whole matzah and 1 broken matzah, because it's supposed to be called lechem oni, the bread of the poor person. So you should have 1 broken matzah to symbolize poor. Others say it should be 3 matzahs, 2 whole matzahs and 1 broken, because it's similar to the 2 portions that we do, like when we do 2 chavos on Shabbos, 2 portions in the temple. So there's some say that you should not have just 1 broken and one whole, but you should have 2 whole and a broken. And the tradition, but its tradition, is to have 3 matzahs, and if it's not possible, 2 is fine. There's also a very interesting debate while I'm on this about the blessing of alachilas matzah, that it should be whether it should be recited over the whole matzah or the broken matzah. And to avoid this argument, what we do is we say the bracha on both the whole and the broken matzah. We hold them both in our hands. But there is a great debate. What we're supposed to do is we're supposed to eat a kazayit of matzah. A kazayit is either 1 whole square if you eat square, but I highly recommend, the tradition is to eat shmura matzah, especially for the first Seder, since it's a biblical obligation to eat matzah, that we should have shmura matzah that was washed, that was handmade, at least for the Seders, and that would be a half of a shmura matzah would be considered a kazayis. There are some people who go so far as to weigh it. I'm not like that, but if you want to weigh it to make sure that it's exactly a kazayit, you are welcome to do it. I can probably find you the exact weight measurement for you. Next question. Can I use my regular candlesticks for Pesach? Yes, you can clean them very well. Make sure there's no chametz on them. If you do keep them on your table during the year, then you should really, really make sure that they're well cleaned. But if you don't keep them on your table, then we already have a chash that they're probably not full of chametz, but you should just still make sure that they're not full of chametz and you can use them. Do I have to buy new cleaning products, or can you use your regular open ones from the year? You can use your regular open cleaning products because they are lo yachil le'acheles kalev. They are classified under something that a dog would not eat, and you don't have to worry about that. Though, if you want to be careful when you're cleaning for Pesach, you can just take a look at the bottle and make sure that there's no breadcrumbs that got stuck on it for whatever reason. When can you serve a romaine lettuce salad? Our tradition is that we, in order to keep the appetite for the items at the Seder, that we don't serve items that are on the Seder plate besides for the Seder until after the second Seder. So the second night of Pesach already, after the second Seder, you can already start serving things that were used on the Seder plate because you've already used them. So that's the tradition. And if you live in Israel and you do only 1 day, then you would only have to do it after the first Seder. That's only tradition to keep our appetite excited for the Seder items, not only for the matzah itself, but for the Seder items as well. Okay. What's the deal with books? Do we need to go through them? If you're the kind of person who's very careful about your books, then I would say, I mean, like anything else, you go through them. I mean, you don't have to go through every single book and check every single book. No. And dust is not chametz. Children's books, I would say I would wash children's books because it's probably more obvious that they were sitting at the table, that they were part of chametz, so you can at least wash the outside, or just I would be a little more careful with children's books than adult books. But if they're sitting on your most adults are not dipping their books into chametz, and if there were, heaven forbid, a spill, they probably cleaned it up, or they probably know about it. So I don't think you have to go through every single book. The job, again, this is, we only have a limited amount of time between now and Pesach, and you also want to have some sanity left. What's more important, the first or second Seder? It's a very, very good question. The first or second Seder, I would say that they are equally important in the diaspora, because the reason why it was created, because you weren't sure which one is the first one. Though, because we established the 14th of Nisan as the first Seder, I would say the first Seder is more important because the first Seder is the biblical commandment, where the second Seder is just there just in case we got the wrong day of the 14th of Nisan. So the first Seder would be more important. How much matzah do we eat? The tradition is to have a total of 4 kezesim, 4 half shmura matzahs. Some people even have a tradition, if they have the Seder plate in front of them, to have 5 halves, which is 1 or 2 for matzah, 1 for the korech sandwich, and 2 for afikomen. But you can also have 1, 1, and 1. Just having 1 kazayit for each of them is fine. 1 for matzah, 1 for korech, 1 for afikomen. But we get caught up a lot in tradition. I want to remind you that the essential mitzvah is to eat 1 single kazayit of matzah, which is half an average-sized egg without the shell. It's the weight of 1 dry ounce, according to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch 486.1, or I found this in the Luach Kol El Chabad, 1 dry ounce. So if you have a measurement there and you want to measure your matzah of 1 ounce, then you can know exactly what it is. Generally speaking, it's half the size of a shmura matzah. There are many people, starting from the Maharal of Prague, used to approximate it by sight, but there are many people who will weigh it. Now, the matzah is supposed to be eaten in a prescribed amount of time, what's called bechdei achilat prat. Some opinions say that you should eat the matzah within 4 minutes. Some say 6 minutes. And some say the maximum is 9 minutes, which is ideal is 4 minutes. I'm talking about the first matzah you eat. But the maximum is 9 minutes. Some, I'll just give you, there's the Trumat Hadeshen that says that it should be eaten in a single gulp, in a single swallow. I just think about all the different traditions. Anyway, if you fulfill the mitzvah matzah, I think if you have one kazayit, 1 dry ounce, 1 half a shmura matzah within 9 minutes, you are fine to fulfill the matzah. If you do take your time to eat the matzah and it's a little longer than the prescribed time, or you only eat a small amount of matzah, or it's less than a kazayit for the Seder night, you have still fulfilled the qualitative part of the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is just to eat matzah. And the bracha is not in vain. There is a quantitative mitzvah, but you still will fulfill the biblical qualitative mitzvah to eat matzah, even if you have a little piece on the night of Pesach. There's a tradition the first night to end the Seder before midnight. What happens if somebody arrives at the Seder after midnight? The reason, by the way, the reason why we finish the Seder before and we eat the Afikomen before midnight is because that was the Korban Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice, who had to be eaten before midnight. But if you, if for some reason somebody slept and they arrive at your Seder late, then they should just make sure that they eat matzah. And there's an opinion that you can, according to the biblical commandment, is good all night until morning. So as long as they eat the matzah while it's still nightfall, that's fine. But if it's after midnight, the tradition is not to make the bracha al achilat matzah. To just eat the matzah, make hamotzi, eat the matzah, but not to have the special bracha that we say at the Seder, the bracha of al achilat matzah. Any other questions? Right, you can unmute yourself with pleasure. Okay. Okay, so there are many people. This is another little controversial piece I'm going to say, but I think it's important to say it. There are many people who have a tradition of not mixing the matzah with anything liquid. The reason why, so it's called the tradition of keeping gebrachs, or as the Code of Jewish Law says, matzah sharuya. It's based on a concern that the matzah may contain particles of flour which weren't fully baked, and when you come into contact with that water, it may become chametz. That's the basis for it. And this concern is particularly relevant when they used to use coarse flour. They used to have what's called matzah ove. It was this thick, coarse matzah. Today we use fine flour, and it doesn't have the same problem. But due to the prohibition on Pesach not even to have a minute amount of chametz, you should also be stringent not to allow the matzah to come into contact with water. Now, this chumrah is disputed by the Chacham Tzvi and Rabbi Yaakov Emden. And the reason why they dispute it is they say it causes a lack of a joy of Simchat Yom Tov. It causes people to be, today we would say OCD, and they can't enjoy the holiday. And if it comes to the point where you can't enjoy the holiday, then I think that it's really important that if you're that kind of person, that you should not be so stringent. Though the Alter Rebbe writes that someone who is stringent with regards to this should be blessed, and I think let's keep it at that. That you're blessed if you do it, but if you're the kind of person, and everyone knows their nature, where you are going to go overboard, and I think in general with Pesach, if you're the kind of person who's going to go overboard, then you should not be fulfilling the mitzvah to the point where you can't enjoy the holiday. The point is Simchat Yom Tov, to actually have enjoyment of the holiday. Yeah, please, Alana.
I just have a question apropos of today's situation, like with the hostages. I'm just asking what your recommendation is, like to have an extra chair. Should the chair be at the table? Should the chair be aside? Should we, like, how do you recommend we
So this is not a new
approach this?
This is not a new idea. The idea that they're having this year about leaving a chair empty at the table for the hostages or for the fallen IDF soldiers, or for in general those who have lost their life during this difficult time. In 1946, the Joint did a huge campaign. It was the first Pesach after World War II. There were many. It became clear to a lot of the people outside of Europe that of the Holocaust had just become fresh. Survivors were many of them still in DP camps, but they started to become clear that how many millions had been lost, and they made a strong campaign that people should leave a chair empty. And then later in the 50s, they also did a campaign. The Rebbe was very against this campaign. The Rebbe said that if you want to honor the fallen, if you want to honor those people, then find somebody who doesn't have a Seder and put them in the chair. And that would be the best way, because there's so many people who don't have a Seder. We sit at our Seder, we say whoever's hungry, let them come and eat. This year, maybe, look, we have hostages that will not, God willing, they will be able to have a Seder. But if heaven forbid, in the next 1 week from tonight, they're not able to experience the Seder, then I think that maybe it's our responsibility to make sure that we find someone who can fulfill the Seder and can experience the Seder instead of them. And maybe that's the answer, or make sure that we take care of that those who don't have, if we can't find someone for our Seder, we can make sure that there's a Seder that does have those who are less fortunate at it, that they are taken care of in our community, or somebody or family in Israel that maybe can't make Pesach this year, to make sure they're taken care of, something like that. On top of that, we are also, I made together with a group of people, there's a couple of synagogues we're doing it together, and we made a number of stickers. You can buy stickers, and each sticker has either a hostage or a fallen soldier on that sticker, and you can put it on your wine bottle. That was the idea behind it, or you don't have to. And at least that maybe to mention during the meal, Shulchan Aruch, to mention someone, and to learn the same way we have an obligation to teach our children the story of Pesach. We can also, I'm not going to say that it's the same context, but it's a beautiful thing to be able to make sure that the kids know what's going on, and that we should remember, and we should think about, and we should pray for those who need those prayers during this time, during this very difficult time. That would be my recommendation. Okay, typically, is it better for just the leader to have a Seder plate, or for everyone? What I would say is that there are traditions for each person in the household to have their own Seder plate. The Seder plate's purpose. Okay, so let's talk about the Seder plate's purpose. And I think once I explain it to you, you're going to understand exactly what to do. The purpose of the Seder plate is you should not have to get up. Besides, you're going to wash your hands, even though people even have a tradition of having the washing station at the table. That you shouldn't have to get up at any point, because it's a symbol of freedom. We're reclining, we're doing all these things, and all of these different elements are partially a symbol of freedom. And so everything you're going to need for your Seder experience is in the Seder plate. And that's the purpose of it. It's not this metaphorical idea of having a Seder plate. It's actually a practical purpose to use in order to enjoy and appreciate the Seder as best as possible. That's the reason. Which means you don't have to have everybody have it. There's a tradition of everyone having it, but you could also have versions of a Seder plate. You can have one big Seder plate and have everybody, in the middle of a table, and then have everybody take from that one big Seder plate, for example. You can do so many different things, but that is, if you think about the purpose of the Seder plate, then maybe you can think about a practical solution for how everyone can enjoy the Seder plate. You don't have to have everyone having an individual Seder plate at their table, at their place. Okay, let's talk about maror. Nowadays, the mitzvah of maror is a rabbinic commandment. It's not a biblical commandment. And it can be fulfilled with a horseradish or lettuce. And if you can't find two different types of vegetables, one for karpas and one for maror, you could use the same vegetable for both. We don't have this problem. I know people in different places have this problem, but if you use, according to Jewish law, if you use the same vegetable for both karpas and for maror, you have to make the bracha on the maror during karpas, because you're using the same vegetable. It's the first time you're having it. So I know it's a little complicated, but we don't have these problems. So if you get two different bitter vegetables, you're fine. And we have more than enough, thank God, since potatoes grow in aisle 2, and so do apples. We have more than enough options in our local grocery. what happens if you don't have traditional ingredients for charoset? What do? So charoset traditionally is apples and nuts. Any other fruit could be added to it, as well as wine. The reason for this is because there's a dispute as to whether the charoset is meant to symbolize the blood or the straw and cement, which is why we add the wine. The custom is to have it symbolize both the straw and cement by having the fruit and nuts, and then also to have a little bit of wine there to symbolize the blood, the suffering of the Jewish people. As a bare minimum, and again, I told you I would talk about the bare minimums as well, so you know. You can make charoset from a cut vegetable and you can mix it with water as a bare minimum. But obviously we don't have these problems. And so you can use beautiful fruits and have there's many different types of charoset dishes. I just did a wine tasting in Portland, Maine, and the pairing was with all different types of charosets from around the world. The chef went and researched different Jewish communities in the world and put together a beautiful menu of charoset dishes. If you want, I think I took a copy of the menu and I can get you some of those charosets if you want to do something different. There was an Indian charoset that was really something. Anyway, somebody arrives late to the Seder and you already finished eating matzah and you're eating maror. Can they eat maror before matzah and then go back to the matzah? So the order of the Seder is to eat the matzah first and then the maror. The reason why is it says in the Torah, al matzot umorim yochluhu. So because in the Torah, the word matzah comes from maror, we do the matzah first. But if you arrive late to the Seder and you eat the maror before the matzah, you still fulfill both mitzvahs as long as you had both of them at night. Any other question? Okay. Here's one that every so often, I remember as a kid, this used to happen, and where General Mills just decided on Pesach to send Cheerios in the mail. So what happens if you get a gift on Pesach of chametz? So if you get a gift on of chametz, you cannot accept the gift, because if you accept it, it means that it's your chametz in your possession. So and obviously you don't have to say to the person, I don't accept your gift. Now that's not nice, but you can just in a nice way put it aside, and at the earliest opportunity you destroy it. So you wouldn't be able to put it in with the sold chametz because you sold it before Pesach. We'll talk about selling chametz in a second. You should definitely it needs to be destroyed. So how you could flush it down the toilet, you can, I don't know, burn it. If it's on Shabbat that you get the gift, then you should cover it, put it away, and destroy it after Shabbat. But it definitely needs to be destroyed. I don't see any other way of dealing with it. Okay, let's talk about selling chametz, because I want to give you a little bit of the background of selling chametz and explain to you what it is and how it's done. Some people think they can just, all you do is just tell your non-Jewish friend, I'm selling you the chametz. It's not that simple. So the concept of selling chametz is based on the following consideration. The Torah says it's forbidden to have possession of chametz on Pesach. Now, this prohibition suspends ownership of the chametz. The Torah imposes the person's ownership over the chametz, that if the person doesn't take any steps to physically remove the chametz before Pesach from their possession. So you have two choices according to Jewish law. You can either destroy the chametz, or you can transfer the ownership of the chametz to a non-Jew before Pesach. Now, in the old days, they didn't have these problems because who had food? But thank God we live in a world of abundance and we have a tremendous amount of food. And so, therefore, today it became much more prevalent to transfer ownership of the chametz to a non-Jew. There are two ways to do this: by giving it as a gift to the non-Jew or by selling it to the non-Jew. Today, the widespread custom is to sell your chametz to a non-Jew. The way it's done is explained. There's a book, a sefer called Trumas Hadeshen, and this is the first time we see the process of selling chametz. So he writes that a non-Jew gives a small amount of money to the person that's selling the chametz, and by giving this small amount of money, they gain ownership of the chametz that's being sold. Now, according to the Noda B'Yehuda, the remaining balance of the value of the chametz is left as a loan from the non-Jew to the Jew, and full payment is effected upon the return of the chametz after Pesach. The Alter Rebbe added a very interesting component that we do today, which is a guarantor. It's called an Orav Kablan. You may have heard of this term at a wedding where there's a Tanayim. There's also an Orav Kablan. There's a guarantor. So basically, it's a creditor. It's a Jewish guarantor where the Gentile, the creditor, can claim without having to go to the debtor. So they can literally, if they want to, it's an extra clause to show that really it's not just this symbolic thing like here's $1. It's actually a real loan. There's a real document that's written up, and the rest of the chametz is a loan. And if the Gentile wants, they can go to the Orav Kablan, to the guarantor, and they can take whatever money they want for that chametz during Pesach. It really has to be owned by the non-Jew. It can't be like this. It's not a symbolic thing. It's actually because it is a biblical prohibition to have chametz in your possession during Pesach. So there has to be a real transaction that happens there. Ideally, this person who is the guarantor should not be someone who has to sell their own chametz, because then they are negei b'davar. They have skin in the game. The reason for this is that there should be no direct indebtedness and expect full payment from the debtor or from the non-Jew, and the creditor, the Jew, that might nullify the sale. We don't want to, it's a real actual document. We don't want to nullify the sale. In addition, the Alter Rebbe also made that the need for the non-Jew to rent the space containing the chametz, what's called an agav karka, which means that when we sell the chametz, we don't just sell the chametz itself, we also sell the space that it's in, because there's no way that the chametz can exist without the space. So whatever closets or items, that's why when you fill out the form for chametz, there's a tradition of putting exactly the closets in the place that you have, because we're going to sell that as an agav karka. There are some particular rabbinic views that maintain the sale between the non-Jew with money, but without a physical transfer of the object, is not sufficient. So the Maharil instituted this idea of a kinyan, of the exchange of a cloth, which is why if you go to the rabbi to do it, often the rabbi is going to have you lift up a cloth. In the Alter Rebbe's own sale document, this is just interesting, he adds two further methods: a handshake and a key transfer. The key transfer is not done nowadays, though there are some people who every so often I get a key when I'm selling the chametz, but the handshake is done, but not the key transfer. And what I would say is, due to the importance of ensuring that a Jew does not own chametz on Pesach, as well as the complexity of this process, the important thing is to make sure that a rabbi who's competent in the law do it, and not just do it yourself. I know that it's very easy to just like, to do it, but it's so easy. It's much easier today, actually, to just go online and go to jewishandtheg.com/sell chametz and do it that way. It's better than trying to figure it out yourself. If it happens to be that you get to a point where you cannot sell your chametz through a rabbi for whatever reason, and uh, you're not so knowledgeable in all the laws to be able to do it yourself, what do you do? So what I would do is I would just put it all aside, and then I would go to a non-Jew, and I would say, I have, I don't know, $5,000 worth of chametz there. Can I sell it to you? If that non-Jew says yes, you need to take a certain amount of money from the non-Jew. And as tradition, and the rabbi does the same thing, is that after Pesach, you buy it back with a profit. So we always make sure to take care of the Gentile. That's the tradition, that we buy it back with a profit for the Gentile, so that that it's a real thing, and that in order for us to buy it back, that there was a profit made. How do we manage the non-chametz? An open bag of vegetables, if actual chametz food is in the freezer or fridge. I don't exactly understand the question, which means you want to use it on Pesach, and it was in,
I'll
yeah,
clarify. So like we have food in the freezer that we've used during the year. So like if
okay.
I'm cooking and I use some peas, but like that bag of peas is still open in my freezer. I don't want to use it on Pesach. I don't want it to be in contact with my Pesach food because I've like cooked with it during the year. But it's not chametz. Like just
I
like
would,
just
if you're not
what
going
does
to use it
that
on, if you're not going to use it on Pesach, I would sell it with whatever. You're probably going to have a shelf that you're going to cover and sell with the chametz, correct?
Can we do that?
Why
Can we
not?
sell part of our freezer?
Absolutely. You can cover, just take some contact paper or some silver foil or something and cover a shelf, and you can say sold with the chametz. Absolutely.
Let's say our freezer is too full with like Pesach chicken and meat, and we don't have like an actual shelf we can sell. Can we sell part of the freezer?
Yeah, you can sell part. Just what I would do is take all of the chametz in your freezer and wrap it in a plastic bag and write sold on it.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
I'm gonna think of like practical solutions. This is good. This is very good. What else? Is there anything I haven't covered? I mean, I can keep on going if you want, but I love to make sure that I'm covering what you want to know leading up to Pesach. You can unmute yourself. You can write it in the comments. If you have a regular scheduled cleaning help, this is the question. You do not have to change anything. It's the same for Yom Tov as Shabbat. Ideally, if you have a regular scheduled cleaner that comes, they should come another day besides for Shabbat and the Chag. And what you do is, as tradition, you pay them more, you more for the other day, and then nothing for the Chag or Shabbat, obviously. But if it's a regular cleaner, they can do anything they want. The best situation is having a regular cleaner because it's in their best interest. If they, I don't know, whatever they're supposed to get done, I don't know if I would have them do specific things that were prohibitions of on Shabbos. Yeah, it's a whole different category and classification. But I don't think there's anything specific that they can do, because the truth is that especially if I'm trying to think of like what a regular cleaner would be, if they feel responsible for something, they can do it for themselves. So if they normally do something, let's say once every 2 weeks, then they don't have to do it on Yom Tif. But what if they do something every day? Then it's in their best interest. That's their job, and this is what they do, and they get the satisfaction of their job from what they're doing. So that's not an issue. I would about payment, as per tradition, I would pay them for their time that if they're a regular cleaner, you're not worried about them not showing up. If you're worried about them not showing up, then you pay them afterwards. Do not pay them on Yom Tov. But if you are not worried about them, are the person who is here in our home has been here for, I don't know, 12 years, not worried about her not showing up, I always just pay her before the holiday for the time that she'll be working on the holiday so that I don't have to transfer any money on that day. What else? Okay, I am sure that various things will come up. You are welcome to text me. Also, Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of the Seder, of uh, how to run the Seder, ideas of how to make the Seder more engaging and exciting. And I'm also going to go through lots of different like little questions and thoughts and various things that will make the Seder more interesting for you and the participants, and a little bit of my tricks over the years of doing that. So that's going to be on Wednesday night, the same time this one started. With that, I wish you all a very good evening.